What is up, everybody? Today we are going to tie a crab, and I've been using crabs a lot for stripers, and this is the green crab of Maine. So first, here I have some craft fur. This is just some olive craft fur, and we're going to tie that about the length of the shank of the hook. This hook that I am using is a saltwater gamakatsu hook, an SL12S, size 1/0, and I think it is the best. This pattern, I must give credit to James Brown, who is like the striper goat. This is called a crab pot fly. I tie mine just a touch differently, but it's basically the same, so I must give credit to him. Next, we're going to come in with some of, this is 70-pound mono, and I've just burnt the ends to make a little eye there. I like to flare them out so that they stick out, like so. And I go about halfway down this craft fur here. Okay. This pattern is going to be riding hook up. There's going to be weight on the bottom here, so remember, your eyes should be kind of pointed up a little bit. That way they're not dragging in the sand. So try and point them up just a little bit. This is 70, it's a little on the thick side, but everything gets covered up here anyways, so let's see here. Boom. Tie that in. The thread that I'm using is also mono. How's that? That looks pretty good. See that eye there? It's just, that way it won't be dragging in the sand. Good. Now we'll go on to the next eye here. Just try to line it up. Remember, you want it to flare out a little bit. Boom. Match up the eyes. Terrific. These will get bumped around quite a bit. You know, they'll get banged up by fish and kind of sporadically dumped around. Just a touch there. Pretty good. Alright, I'll tie those up. Good. If you're really worried, you can add some super glue because it would be mono on mono. The next step is to come in here. Here, this is SF blend. We're going to be working with this a lot. Alright. I'm going to take a little bit, just like 2 or 3 strands, really thin amount, and I'm going to wind it up on my mono thread. It's going to make basically just a thicker thread. It's essentially a dubbing noodle, but with something a little different. Okay, so I've just added that little bump right there, just a little bump. Next, I'm going to flip it over. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start sort of building that shell. So we're going to be working with a lot of these pencil thick strips. But what I'm going to do is basically make a flat piece here that covers the eyes. I'm going to make a little flat piece that covers the eyes. But before I do that, we're going to toss in the claws. I have 2 feathers for the claws. One thicker, one thinner, because the green crab has a thicker claw on one side and a thinner claw on the other. I don't think it particularly matters if you get this claw perfect, but you know what? Whatever. Still cool. This is what I've been using for my feather. You can use an olive one too, but I don't know, I kind of like this barred style. So what I do is I make it tail out, so it's kind of like a claw extending. And it just goes past this, you know, a little bit past the little feeders here. So I will get that locked in. There's one. And I like them to be about the same length. Try to get them roughly the same length. Let's see. Great. That looks pretty good. I'm again going to try to angle them upwards just a little bit, like not a lot, but just a little bit so that they don't get caught in the sand as I'm dragging it in the sand. All right. Trim the excess off. Pretty good. Then I'm going to come back. This is where James's pattern and my pattern differ just a little bit. He is way more meticulous than I am when he does this. He uses this dubbing technique to kind of cover up any gaps. He does that every single time he does something, and his look spectacular. Really, really full. And I think it even offers some more protection and some more fullness in the pattern. But I do not do that. I only do it for the first couple. Alright, so now we have our eyes, our claws. Now we'll come in with the first little bit, and it's just going to be just tucked up in there. It's just going to be tucked up in there, right sort of on the hook. And we're just going to cinch it down. Great. And cut it off. Now for the remainder, I'm going to do basically the same step. Basically the same step. And I'm going to show you how to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my piece, I'm going to hold it on the side closest to me, so right on the side, and just about an inch. This is going to become the crab, so you're going to do some trimming at the end, but just maybe an inch of material or 2 inches of material. Lay it down directly on the side, like so. I've caught it a few times now. Then I'm going to take this longer piece, go across, catch it once, and pull it to the side so that it is now caught. So I have 2 strands on each side, perfectly flat across. It's a little tricky, but once you start getting the hang of it, it's not a big deal. And I'm just going to go back. Okay. So wrap that up, make it nice and tight, and then I'm going to trim, cut that off. And I'm going to do the same thing all the way up the hook. I'm probably going to get 5 or 6 wraps of this. And you just want to make it nice and tight, so there's really no space in your crab. So after I do this one, I'm going to speed it up for you just so that you can see it. Boom, tie it in, and over we go. Great. So they should be nice and flat, right? Because crabs are pretty flat. We don't want it to be this round, circular, 360-degree, bushy thing. We just want it to be nice and flat, like so. Okay, so I got a few more, so I'm going to speed it up for you. Okay, so at this point, we have made most of the crab body. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add the weight. And remember, we want it to ride hook up, so the weight is going to go on the bottom. Here, this is a medium, just dumbbell eye. I think they call it dressing or presentation eyes. And I'm going to put it right there, right as close to the eye of the hook as possible. Sometimes I'll use a different thread to do this because the mono breaks pretty easily. Okay, there we go. So I'll use a different thread to do that. So I decided to just add a few wraps of the tougher thread. This is just thicker thread. just keeps it a little more attached. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is I want these silly legs here to be dangling on the bottom like so. All right, and so what I'm going to do, this is going to be a little interesting, a little harder to follow. I'm going to tie them in on top, and I'll show you what I'm going to do with them. So I'm going to tie them in on top like so. Okay, these will be used, I basically cut it in half, so I use these for my next crab. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it and I'm going to pull 2 to the left and 2 to the right of the hook eye. So I pull it from the top right over and then underneath so that I catch them on this underside. Alright, and then I'll just kind of space them out a little bit. Great, space them out. And I want them to be about as long, maybe a little bit longer than the claws, but pretty close to the claw length. So here's one going just a little bit past that claw. The reason I do this is because it adds extra protection for the presentation eye. This is a common point where the thread meets that. It's a common point of failure. And this is fished in the sand, so it's constantly rubbing on the sand. And that thread wears down. This adds an extra layer of protection to this crab, and I have found that ones that I wrap the silly legs over the top like this, they last much longer. So that's sort of why I do it. That's why I do it, because it adds an extra layer of protection. Okay, and then, unfortunately, let's see here, I can make this. You add one more. I say unfortunately because I had to get a whole new strand of SF blend. So you're gonna add one more tie-in behind the legs. So when you tie in your legs, you just tie them down a little bit. So just one more, right as close to the eyes as you can to round off this crab. Pull it up over, catch it on the side. Great. Give it a little trim, and now you will whip finish. Ooh. I do a few just because it's mono, and if you really want to make your knot secure with mono, then just add just a little drop of super glue to your knot. Just a little drop. And that will all but secure it, like completely. You know, you won't have to do anything to it. And you won't have to worry about it breaking when it's rubbing in the sand. Okay, so now we have our crab, but we want it not to look like this, obviously, but we'd like it to look like a crab. And they basically are just rounded corners, so you can just basically cut and trim to make a semicircle. And I'll back the camera up. I'll say this, you could spend like hours doing this because you'll never get every fiber to lay like super perfect. But do your best to make a semicircle and make it somewhat even. I used to measure, like I would measure the length with a ruler. That was stupid. Don't do that. Because they're just gonna get beat up. And yeah, so I'll do this and then I'll show you the angle of what it looks like. Okay, so here is kind of the final design that I got going on. So you see I just have this semicircle shape, and there it is. There's the crab that's going to be catching monster stripers. It's not perfect. You can see like this side I think is a little longer, so maybe I'll trip that. But when you're dragging it around, it really doesn't matter. But here, here's what they see. I don't know if you can see that, but pretty crabby to me. Pulling away, kind of scuttling away. So there's the James Brown. If you don't know who he is, go check him out on pretty much everything. James Brown, he's worth a follow. Guy's a maniac. That's the crab pot, the green crab pot, James Brown style. Mine's a little bit different. His is definitely more, he colors it up. He makes it way more official than I do. His is better. I don't know. His is better. I think it is. But this one, I've caught plenty of fish on this year, and it doesn't seem to matter a whole lot. So this is sort of a quicker way to do it. But like I said, go check James out. Or if you're looking for a striper guide, he's another guy you can reach out. Okay, thanks to HMH. Check out their new TRV, won best in class vise this year because it is literally the best vise in the world. And check out our website, maineflyguys.com. If you don't know, we're selling reels now. Pretty sick. Need a reel, need a 5-6 weight reel, go check it out. Again, affordable stuff, great quality. Thanks for watching. See ya.